Welcome, everybody. Good morning, welcome to our panel on managing customer reviews. My name is Christine Sowers, and I'm the president of the Delaware Better Business Bureau. We are hosting this day-long event in conjunction with the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce. I'd like to thank you all for tuning in to our first panel of the day, and I'd also like to thank our sponsor today, Ferris Home Improvement. I'd also like to remind you that there is a game on the app that hopefully everybody is playing. I know that I was on the leaderboard for a little while this morning, but now I think I've dropped pretty low. But there is a game on the app to keep you engaged throughout the day. You can earn points lots of different ways. One of the ways is entering secret codes. This panel's secret code, I will give it to you now, and I will mention it again one more time at the end of the presentation. The code for today's customer review panel is feedback. So again, that's feedback. If you want to enter it in, you can get your points now, and I'll mention it one more time, like I said, at the end. So there are wonderful prizes awarded after today's events based on your total point accumulation. So getting into things, we thought the topic today on customer reviews was really important as it's a key part of everybody's marketing programs now. Reviews aren't the future, they are the now, and businesses need to figure out a way to manage a strategy around them. Here are just a few important key stats to keep in mind as we move into this panel discussion. 84% of people trust online reviews as much as a personal recommendation. 7 out of 10 consumers will leave a review for a business if they are asked to. And 73% of consumers think that reviews older than 3 months are just no longer relative to their purchasing decision. A positive online reputation is one of the most powerful marketing assets a business has to attract prospects and build its brand, and one of the keys to earning that reputation is reviews. Reviews help consumers as a shorthand way to judge a company, helping prospects make buying decisions faster and with greater confidence. But while businesses clearly agree that having positive reviews is important, determining how to reach that goal can be slightly less clear. How many positive reviews does your business need? How many different platforms and websites should they appear? How do you get reviews? And are all testimonials created equal? How do you deal with negative reviews or fake reviews? Enter more confusion. What are you allowed to say in a response to a review legally? How do you get a review taken down, and should you even bother? And the list goes on. The internet can just be the Wild West. People can say what they want, they can say it anonymously, and they can say it often. It stays there forever. But there must be some laws to protect your business, right? What are your rights and resources as a business? Today, we're talking with 2 experts to get some insight to help your business manage your online reputation. We'll be touching on all of these points. I will moderate today's panel, so let's kick things off. Our panelists today include Molly DiBianca. Molly is an attorney with the law firm of Clark Hill, where she dedicates her legal practice to assisting employers as both a counselor and litigator. Molly has written and presented nationally on several times on today's subject. She's also appeared for BBB before on this matter in a panel just a couple years ago. Lyle Weddle is the marketing manager at Horizon Services Heating, Cooling, and Plumbing, which has now grown to include multiple national brands. With over 10 years of communications digital marketing experience, Lyle leads a brand reputation team that is responsible for driving over 500,000 reviews spanning various online platforms. So I feel like we've got the two experts in the state of Delaware joining us today to talk to us a little bit about consumer reviews. Thank you both for joining. I am going to kick things off with questions, and I'll start with Lyle. So you're on the hot seat first, Lyle. Is it okay to ask for reviews, and how do you go about getting them?
So thanks for having me. How's everybody doing? Good. Can't see you all, but I know you're all out there. Is it okay to ask for reviews? Absolutely. Yes, 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 but. So you want to make sure the reviews that you're asking for, the platform that you're asking your consumer to leave them on, you want to be familiar with their policies. There's, great platforms like the BBB, Google, those easy, no barrier entries. You don't have to pay, you don't have to have an account to leave a review. But then there's the vein of my existence right now in my field is Yelp. So Yelp, for whatever reason, doesn't want you to ask for reviews. Don't ask for reviews. Don't say anything about reviews. Drive people to our platform and it'll happen. So that's kind of the one, the 10 out of 10, where 9 out of 10 say yes. But the main goal is always ask for reviews. Like Christine said, 75% about people who get asked for reviews will leave a review. There's so many consumers out there that are so willing and ready to complain about your business online that you need to offset that by nudging those who are happy to share their experience. If you don't ask, a lot of times they won't make the effort. So I would say yes, 100% of the time, ask for reviews.
So where do you want them to appear? Which review sites? You said maybe thumbs down to Yelp, but there's a couple that you do like. Do you want to drive them to your Facebook? To your Facebook page, to your website directly? And how many per site? So like, what's a good balance for on Facebook versus your site versus maybe a review site?
Sure. So I guess it depends on your business and where your consumers are. That's the important part. Find out more about your consumers, where they're going. You want your reviews to be where they are, because if your current consumers are there, then your potential consumers are probably looking there too. There's no magic number. It depends on the site. So Google's a great example. Google's a powerhouse. People, if you're selling a product, people are going to say, okay, reviews on this product. They're going to search in Google. Do those searches yourself about yourself and about your products. See what comes up in the SERP. See what comes up in the results. If there's review sites in the top results, which there probably will be, see if you're not on them, how to get on them, because that's where people are going to go. Another important thing to think about is, how are these reviews going to be used? Are people just reading them? Are they taking them in? Or are the platforms actually using them? So in a service business like myself, or the one that we work for, LSAs, local service ads from Google, that platform initially was review driven, meaning you were invited to participate early based on the number of reviews and your brand reputation there. So obviously it was very important to have a good, strong, solid foundation of reviews there. Now, as that platform developed, more and more people got invited, which turns the corner, because now you're on a listing of 2, 5, 10, 20 people that are listed, and one of the only things that can separate you is your reviews. So I would say, if it's a platform like that where people are quickly browsing and comparing your business to someone else's, yeah, it would be good to have more reviews there. So keep note of that, but there's no magic number. We like to spread it out for our situation particularly. Facebook, yes. Google, yes. Even Yelp, yes. BBB is great. Think about, what the consumer behavior is, where they're going is most important, and then how they're interacting with it, but also what platforms are credible to them. Like the BBB is great because people know the BBB. They don't have to know your business. They know the BBB. They know that, it's a third party essentially that's kind of moderating all of this. So it's credible. You're authentic, you're genuine, you're credible there. It's good to have reviews on your own site. It'll help with SEO, but there's a law of diminishing returns. If you get, 10,000, 20,000 reviews on your site, where some of those reviews could have been on a different platform, what's the cost benefit there? Are you really driving that many people to your site based on those reviews? And do they believe them? If you have, overwhelming amount of positive reviews on your site, they're going to say, they're just making them up. We're not going to believe them. But then if they go to Google, type in, I need to review this business. They see, Home Advisor that also has reviews. They see Yelp, they see BBB. Those are all, they believe that you can't manipulate those reviews, which in most cases you can't and shouldn't. So that they're going to believe them more. So it's all about, the authenticity there. So that's, it builds credibility too.
Okay. So that's a lot to manage, especially for a small business. What about hiring a company to get you reviews, or a review aggregator site? I know that those exist. And then talk a little bit about, like, you talk about authenticity, manipulating reviews, verified versus non-verified review sites. Maybe you could talk about those things
Sure.
a little bit.
Sure. It's always a verified site's going to be best, right? People trust it. People know it. I think of it this way. It's, again, back to, if you're Googling, where are those people seeing? But also think about what you're seeing on TV or in streaming. If you're seeing a ton of ads for Yelp, that's doing half your job for you, because they're driving other consumers to Yelp. So if you have those reviews on there, they're already helping push people there. As far as managing them, aggregators, yeah, that's a way to go. It depends on your business and your needs. If you have overwhelming amounts of volume, or even you're a small team or a single person managing this, then a tool like that would definitely help, because a lot of these tools, what they do is it lets you log in, it lets you pull in all these various sites and platforms into like a single unified inbox, so to speak. So, instead of, you logging in and having to go to Yelp.com, go to Google.com, jumping around and hoping that you catch them all, it all pulls it right in front of you, so you can go down the list and check them off. So, I'm a firm believer in, finding the tool that works best. In my business, we've tried a lot. We move around a lot because there's always, the competition there is different. So they'll see, one tool doing this, they'll build on that, and it may be something better. So don't lock yourself into something long term. Make sure you know what you're signing up for, and make sure that it works for you. I wouldn't suggest to have a company say, okay, we're going to take this and manage it for you, we're going to respond for you, we're going to do A to Z for you, because no one knows your business and no one cares about your business as much as you do. If someone, if you're an owner of a business or a small business and someone has a legitimate complaint at 11:30 at night, chances are that agency or companies, they're going to wait till the next day. They're going to wait. They might not even know how to respond properly. But you, as the owner of the business, in and out, you're going to take the most care and prioritize that and get that review or concern solved the best you can. So I'd say be careful about that, but any tools that can make the process easier helps. If you're overwhelmed, you're more likely not to kind of pay attention to it. You'll let them kind of go. You might not respond to them, which you don't want to do. So any tool or aggregator, I think, could help, but test them out first.
Okay, that's good advice. So how do you incorporate reviews and testimonials into your sort of overall branding strategy?
Yeah, that's great. It comes back to credibility again, right? You can only say so much to a consumer until they start, getting overwhelmed with it, or until they stop kind of believing you, or until the market gets flooded with your competitors saying the same exact thing. So that's where, the social proof aspect comes in. That's where the user generated content, that's where the reviews, the credible reviews, the verified reviews come in, because, I can tell my neighbor, this company's great. He might believe me more because he knows me. He knows that I'm not working for that business. He knows that there's no stake in there for me. I'm not, bought out to say the right things. So, having that social proof in different places is great. So what we do is, depending on a product we sell, we may get specific reviews related to that product, or even an area of like a demographic target, and then publish those on Facebook, on newspaper ads and TV spots. A lot of the positive reviews we get, we reach out to the consumer, or the consumer that left it, and follow up with them, try to build that relationship even farther, because they're your biggest brand advocates. And then once that relationship gets kind of established, you can take it a step farther. You could do, a video review with them. There's a whole world that you can open up if you have someone who generally wants to share their experience and it's a good experience. And then if you get that in front of potential consumers, that speaks volumes about your company.
Okay, so I'm a small business and there are reviews out there that I don't know about my company. How do I go about finding those? It's, maybe there's a review out there. So it says, oh, I saw somebody posted about your company on XYZ site. There's a lot of those review sites that exist. I mean, you mentioned the big ones, but there's lots and lots of them. So how do you go about finding them and sort of managing that? And what's the easiest tool for maybe social listening, I guess you talked about?
Sure. So in social side, personally, we use a couple tools. We use Hootsuite, which is pretty popular. We have specific search queries set up based on our brand reputation terms for our individual footprints for each brand. So that helps. There's tools like mention.com. We use old school like Google Alerts. The more the merrier, so to speak. If you're driving all these alerts that of places that's great. But like you said, there's places out there that you don't know. So have your employees be aware of that. There's lots of times where An employee might be, surfing the web in a different area, or may say, oh man, that's my company. Let me know about it. Voice that to them and make sure they bring that to you. That's a really big thing for us. We have an HVAC business, so a lot of the techs are in, specific tech groups and things that, as a marketing person, I might not be as deep in the weeds as they are. So they're always bringing stuff to us. But again, another easy way is to do the Google search. Do a branded Google search with your brand or your product and reviews, or, use the negative terms too. Maybe you hear, you get a few negative reviews, and if people are speaking about, a certain product that breaks in a certain way, Google that too. Google will do a really good job of bringing this to the forefront. One thing to think about too is, if you don't know about it and you're actively, if you can be honest with yourself and say you're actively, trying to monitor the best you can, there's chances are that maybe it's a one-off. Maybe it's a really small website that if you didn't know about it and you're so invested in the brand reputation of your business that consumers might not find it either. So think about that. Prioritize, the obvious ones, the big ones, but just, it's dedication and time. You carve out some time for it. They're not going to just fall in your lap a lot of the times. So make sure you have that in place.
Okay, so I like that, asking your employees to kind of mention that back to you to help funnel information in. That's a great tip. So do you respond to every single review, or does that become just redundant of thanks for your review kind of thing?
Sure. So obviously we're probably afforded a little more luxury being a larger company. So we actually have a couple people dedicated to this. Obviously they do a few other things, but we have the human capital to put towards it. So it might be a little more difficult if you're a very small business. So you need to think about that first. Excuse me. Could you repeat that last part of that question though?
Oh, so like if you just say, if you get all these positive reviews, assuming they're all these great positive reviews,
Gotcha.
do you respond to everyone and say, thanks,
Yep.
thanks?
Sure. So, we have a policy internal to respond to 100% of negative and positive reviews. We hope within 24 hours. But we also have a very strong policy not to, cut and paste. Don't be cookie cutter. In the long run, if you're not responding that quickly, but you're responding in a way that's, a little more personal, a little more, customized to the experience, it overall just gives you a better foot forward. Think about it this way. If, you're looking at a single review and you say, okay, thanks, that's great. But if you widen that so you're not in a vacuum and you see 50 of those, people get to thinking, hey, maybe it's maybe it's an automated system that's happening. Maybe it's like an out of office. They don't really care. They're just doing it and going through the motions. People see right through that. So be as custom and personalized as you can. Take a little bit of time to do it right. If you're going to do it at all, you might as well do it right.
Okay, so 100% response to all reviews in 24 hours.
That's our goal. Yep.
There you go. Okay, interesting. Thank you. So do you ask, Lyle, I'm going to ask you first, and then I feel like there's a piece of this that's going to be directed to Molly. Do you ask for reviews from all of your customers or just some of your customers? And do you ask, how often do you ask? So my question is twofold. It's, is it okay to ask for reviews from customers that probably had a good experience? Do you sort of carve out the ones that you thought, nope, those guys they're not going to have nice things to say about us? Or do you just ask everybody and take what you get that comes back to you?
Sure. So I think, reviews aren't just for, the public. They're not just for consumers. So I think you're doing yourself a disservice if you don't try to ask everyone. We have a system in place that we don't necessarily ask for, hey, a Google review right off the bat, but 100% of the jobs that we complete, as soon as the technician in the truck says, okay, I'm done this job, let me get my information on my mobile device for my next job where I'm going next, that automatically triggers, based on the consumer's data that we have, it triggers a couple communications to them asking for a survey. We actually have a separate individual survey depending on the specific job they have. So we have that personalization there. And it asks a lot more questions than, how is your service? So we ask that survey. It also collects NPS data. So that all comes in. And what we do is we use that negative and positive feedback to look at trends. Our operations managers have direct access to that. The technicians who receive reviews have direct access to that. So everybody can see the negative and positive survey results that come in and the insights that consumers are giving them. What happens then is we look at the NPS data as, the top tier there. We'll carve out what we call our promoters or brand advocates. Once we have that, once we know, the whole scope and we know that top tier of people, we open up a new line of communication with them. We explain, thank you for your service. Thank you for this great, the feedback you've given us on the survey. We know that John, your technician, really appreciates and really feels good for him to see, a reviewer, for you to share experience on Google. So we encourage him that way. So we do kind of pull it apart and ask a certain tier to leave those public reviews, but we do ask 100% of people because, the negative ones for us are just as important as the positive ones. And doing a survey allows us to get even more detailed information about that. So it's not just a 1 star and, this company sucks. It's, why do we suck? Why did you give us 1 star? And then we can go back to then open those lines of communication. We can see, maybe, a part that we're using, a lot of people are giving us a bad review or a bad survey response for it. That gives us an opportunity to improve our business. So that's very important. So we look at both sides. But to answer your question, yes, we kind of do only ask for those top tier, our promoters or advocates. But that's not to say we don't get we get a lot of organic reviews too.
Gotcha. So Molly, is it okay legally to just pick out the people that you think are going to say nice things about you? Or is
Absolutely.
It is? Okay.
Absolutely. And what you're doing is you're just getting testimonials. So in an analog world where we're not digital, in an analog world, if you were making, a threefold flyer that you wanted to hand out, you're not going to ask people who are going to say bad things to give you testimonials, right? We're a business, so we have no duty. We're not BBB, right? Where we have a duty to make sure that it's all neutral and fair. We're advocating on our own behalf. So absolutely, it's totally fine from a legal perspective from a consumer perspective to request the ones that you think are going to be good.
Okay.
That's totally fine. Definitely.
Okay. Interesting. So Molly, then what are the rules for asking for reviews? I know that there have been, I said it's sort of the Wild West, but it's becoming less and less the Wild West as more laws are developed and policy is developed around the internet and reviews and consumer interaction and our rights as far as voicing opinions. So what are some of the rules and obligations when soliciting for reviews, some of the rules and obligations on both the consumer end and the business end? I know specifically, I think the FTC has some policies.
Yep, that's exactly right. So the FTC is the one that controls this sort of space. And their basic rule is, making it all things simple, is if you are going to ask, it's fine. You can ask and you don't have to disclose that you've asked someone to give you a review. But if you give them something in exchange for that review, in other words, if I'm a mom and I'm getting diapers to review and they send me a free pack of diapers, I must disclose that I've received that. That I'm basically being paid in some way, compensated in some way, even though it's not money, it's the value of the pack of diapers. I have to disclose that as the reviewer. So if you are the business that has sent the diapers to the mom to review, you have to make sure you're not the one that has to disclose it, but you have to make sure that your reviewer does disclose it. So that can be hard to manage, right? Because if you're sending lots of free products out and seeking lots of positive reviews, you have to make sure that they are complying. So they can get in trouble, but the FTC says that you can get in trouble too if you fail to make them comply. Another thing that I've seen is sort of similar, but instead of saying, okay, we're going to give you those diapers and you're going to review those diapers, let's say I've ordered jewelry online and the jewelry comes in a box and it's lovely and with a little card, and the card says, please leave us a review. If you leave us a review, we will send you, and sometimes they say, if you leave us a positive review, we will send you a free pair of earrings. Here's your code to redeem it. Once you send it in, send us a review, prove that you've sent us a review, and we'll send you a free pair of earrings. That's another situation where that has to be disclosed. So it's on the obligation of the reviewer, but at the same time, the business can also get in trouble for that. So anytime you're giving anything in exchange for a review or promising to give something in exchange for a review, that has to be disclosed. The sort of corollary to that is with employees. So if you have employees who are reviewing your business, which is perfectly fine, and lots of employees want to review their business, they, you know, the employer that they work for, they want to say good things. They like where they work and they want to support that business. That's great. They must disclose, the FTC says that they must disclose that they are an employee. So they have an affiliation. So if there's some kind of affiliation, that's the word that the FTC uses, that has to be disclosed. So where I come from, you know, in the employment law world, what we want is if you can ideally have a policy for your employees that says, we're happy for you to just, you know, talk great things about us or say wonderful things about us online. But if you do so, please understand that you have to disclose that you're an employee. And the whole reason for that, from the FTC's perspective, is that they want honest and fair reviews. So if you have a bias, meaning some sort of affiliation, you know, the person who's reading that review should have the right to know that you have a bias or affiliation, and then they can judge that. That doesn't mean that they discount it, doesn't mean that they disregard it, but they have to have the right. They have the right to do that, to make that fair assessment. So you can ask, absolutely, but if you give anything in exchange, or if there's any sort of affiliation relationship, then that has to be disclosed in the review.
And that's like a coupon code for the next discount off the next service, whatever it is. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah.
What about, so this is a big one that I've seen just locally. You know, I'm part of a lot of those on Facebook geographic, like, you know, North Wilmington, whatever. And people are always saying, hey, can you refer this person or that person? If you're related to or work for the company, is that a place that you have to disclose the relationship?
Yes. So
okay.
If you are the one making the review. Now, if you're soliciting reviews, so
Right.
if I'm in, you know, whatever the local group is, and I say, hi, I'm a hairdresser, and can people please review my services? That would be great. We would appreciate it. You're soliciting reviews. There's no problem in asking that. That doesn't have to be disclosed. But if you're giving them something in exchange, or if they're an employee or a relative, and that's that affiliation word, then they are going to have a duty to disclose that in the review. But just because they've been asked to make a review, in other words, if I say to you, Christine, could you please give me a review? You don't have to disclose that you've been asked to give a review, but you do have to disclose it if you're going to get something, or if I've promised you something in exchange for it, or if you're an affiliate, meaning an employee or a relative, basically.
Okay. Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So let's get a little bit into the when reviews go bad, when people have had bad experiences. What, Molly and Lyle, this is for sort of both of you. How should you respond when you get a negative review, but it does actually capture their experience? So it's not fake, but it does portray your company in a negative light. I'm going to ask Lyle first, from just your marketing, how you do it, and then I'll ask Molly second, you know, just from the legal perspective. So Lyle, why don't you go first?
Cool. Yeah, and kind of a twist away, negative reviews are a really great opportunity to show that you actually care. That you're a human, you're not just some big business, and that you actually care about the experiences that you're putting out there. So when we do get a review, you know, we own up to it. We're completely honest and transparent as much as we can be. We, you know, open ourselves up to work with that person as much as we can publicly. A lot of times they won't give us the information right away in the review. So in our response, you know, we say, you know, we need to find more information about this. Kind of, you know, prod and poke a little bit, but in a way that says to the other people reading this, okay, they're generally interested in knowing what went wrong. We kind of explain policies in there. If it's, you know, a policy complaint, you know, why this happened, we try to put a little bit in there, and open it up and say, you know, we would like to have, you know, a manager responsible actually contact you. A lot of times, you know, someone leaving a review is just venting. They just want to get it off their chest. Sometimes that's enough, you know, just reaching out to them in the beginning. Sometimes they won't even, you know, once you get on the phone or try to call them, they kind of change their tune. You know, they're hiding behind their keyboards. So then they're like, okay, I get it. You know, everybody has a bad day. They kind of see it through your eyes, but we try to get someone in front of them, whether it's personally in front of them or on the phone, to talk them through the process, to let them understand that, we understand that something may have happened that, didn't exceed your expectations or even meet them, but we want to make it right. And we want to make sure we improve it for the next person. So that's, that's what we do. We try to, put it out there that, yeah, we did it. We made a mistake. We're human. Everybody makes a mistake. Hopefully everybody understands that, but we'd like to follow this up. We don't want to just leave it there. We don't want you to just go away. We want to make it right.
So then, Molly, is it okay to say I'm sorry in a review? Does that open the business up to be sued or whatever eventually? Is saying I'm sorry going to get the business into trouble legally?
This has been a question that's been around since since Yelp began and since online reviews began. There's no doubt people ask this question all the time. Just saying you're sorry does not mean that you are admitting guilt, right? Everyone has heard some politician somewhere say, I'm really sorry that you feel that way, or I'm really sorry if you were offended. In other words, not saying they're sorry for their speech or their conduct or whatever the hurtful thing was. But you can certainly say you're sorry. You can also say, I'm sorry, and in your mind think that I'm sorry that you're a big jerk and you're writing untrue things, right? That's fine. You can think that. That's no problem. It's totally fine. It doesn't mean it's an admission of guilt in any way. And, there's lots, just from a legal perspective, there are lots of science studies that show that in the malpractice context, when a doctor makes an error and injures a patient as a result of their error, when the doctor actually comes forward and says to the patient sincerely, I'm sorry, I made a mistake and I'm sorry, that the patient is far less likely to sue for medical malpractice. So there's actually benefits of just saying that you are sorry, but it's a fine line. It's a dance to make sure that what you're not saying is something that comes off like what I call the politician's I'm sorry, which is I'm sorry that you were offended. You had to be sorry for the thing that you did, not the thing that the other person did. Or the way the person feels. So I'm sorry is totally legally fine and doesn't give you any kind of admission or sort of binding contract or anything like that.
Okay, that's great advice from both of you. So can a business, and this is for Molly, can a business use a non-disparagement clause to avoid negative reviews? And is it ethical if they can?
So they can't legally do that. There's actually a law that was passed, I want to say it's about 4 years ago, and it's known as the Right to Yelp Law. And how it got started was basically there were two groups that were doing this. Doctors, and specifically dentists, were big on this. All sort of doctors generally, but really dentists were very big on this. The American Dental Association was advertising this to their members as a good idea and a way to manage their online reviews. And what they would do is they would put into their, when you go to the dentist or the doctors and you sign the whole clipboard of papers and you sign. In one of those papers was basically a clause that said, if I promise not to write a bad review, and if I do write a bad review, you, the dentist, owns it. So I'm hereby transferring all of my intellectual property rights to this review that I've not yet written. I'm transferring it to you, the dentist. And so what would happen is then the patient would go online, not having no idea that they had signed this boilerplate kind of agreement, and they would make their review, and the dentist would send this piece of paper that the patient had signed into Yelp or wherever they were being reviewed and say, guess what? That is our review. We own that. They transferred their IP rights in that, their ownership rights to us. Here's the paper that proves it. Take it down. So Congress a few years ago passed a law, federal law, that says you can't do that. You can't include boilerplate promises, in a boilerplate consumer contract that they're either not going to write bad reviews, or that if they do write bad reviews, that the company owns them. So that was the first group that did it, was dentists and doctors and dentists in particular. And then the second group were what I would call wedding venues. So hotels, for example, where they were having a wedding. In the wedding contract, they would say, if any of your guests write a bad review, we charge you, the bride and groom, $500. That's an example, but that's an actual case. So that they took different forms, but that was a real case. And so what happened was the bride and groom, unbeknownst to them, one of their guests would say, hey, we were at this venue for this event, and we didn't like the lobster that was served. And then lo and behold, they would bill the poor bride and groom $500 for that negative review. And you can imagine that does not go over very well with the bride and groom and their honeymoon. They get billed $500 for one of their friends writing a comment about the food. So that was part of the reason also. That was the second sort of group of people that Congress was trying to protect. And so what they said was you can't write in basically a non-disparagement clause into a standard consumer contract. If it's a negotiated agreement where the parties are business to business, fine, you can negotiate something like that and write it in. But if it's just a consumer contract, you can't do that. That's actually prohibited by federal law.
That's interesting. So can businesses encourage a reviewer to change a negative review before they're willing to fix a problem? So, sort of like, hey, you're upset because I didn't fix your car right or whatever, you posted a review. I'm not going to fix it until you take it down or change your tone, so to speak.
Legally, that would be okay, but I would say, and Lyle, I'll defer to him, but I would say that business-wise, a terrible idea because you're just giving them fuel for the fire. So if I'm the person that, if I say I bought a pair of earrings and they were terrible, and then the company writes to me and says, we'll send you another pair of earrings if you take that review down. The answer is I'm going to add to my negative review and say, and by the way, they are trying to bully me into taking this review down. So legally there's no problem with it, but practically speaking, and I'd like to hear what Lyle says, but practically speaking, I think that would be a huge backfire probably.
Lyle?
Yeah. I would agree 100% not to do that. It just opens you up so many different ways. Think about it this way. If somebody's leaving a negative review and you're giving them something to fix it, chances are that they're going to tell someone else. So then you're just going to get a bunch of these negative reviews trying to get, something in return. It'll just snowball out of control. So I would just stay away from that completely.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to try and move a little bit more quickly here because we're running out of time and we've got some cool questions. If you do, as attendees, if you have any questions, you want to put them in the chat, go ahead and do that. I'm going to go through two more on our sort of prepared list of questions and then I'll try and get to the chat. Fake reviews. All right. So you've got a disgruntled former employee or you've got a competitor out there that posted a fake review. I want to hear both legally and from a business's marketing image perspective, how do you manage something like that? Lyle, why don't you go first?
Sure. So gratefully, we don't run into this too often. We have in the past dealt with like previous employees. What we do is, again, try to be open and transparent publicly. If they leave a public review, kind of respond in the matter that says, we understand that you're a previous employee, but we also understand that you may not have had the service that you're trying to review. So make it clear that, they're writing about something that they never experienced. And then, if it continues to escalate, if you see that kind of snowball, that's kind of when we, turn to someone like Molly. A lot of times we hopefully don't have to do that because, if they're a longtime employee, they have some sort of relationship. There's a reason that they're, kind of lashing out like that. So we try to get to that root first. But if it gets out of control, that's when we would kind of turn it over.
Okay, so legal side of that, Molly?
Yeah, I agree. I don't see very many of the true fake reviews, but I have seen them. And usually what it is somebody who has some relationship, whether it's a former employee, that's sort of my default go-to, and that situation is what I assume, but some kind of person who's had some kind of relationship, and it's basically revenge. They're trying to get back at the company by posting these fake reviews. So, though that's an example where you can go to the site. So whether it's Yelp or Facebook or whatever, that's the time when you can go to the site and say, these are fake reviews and we want them to be taken down. Sometimes that works. Sometimes that doesn't work. We have had mixed results with getting, the tech companies to be responsive to that. And so it all depends. But if you're not able to get the thing taken down for a fake review, you can absolutely post a response, which is, this is a fake review. This person did not receive this product, service, etc. But luckily it doesn't happen very often, but usually when we see it, I'm trying to think, I would say almost always when we see it, it is someone who has some motivation to attack you for some reason unrelated to the service.
Yeah, from BBB's perspective, we tend to see it. Competitors oftentimes try and filter them in through our review site, and we catch it. We do scrape IP addresses and we verify them. Sometimes it's like spouses of competitors that try and take matters into their own hands, so we try and filter them out. But I imagine it can be tough if you don't know the tech platform personally to get them taken down quickly. A couple questions from our audience. Again, if you've got questions, please go ahead and submit them. Somebody asked, how far back should customer reviews be publicly viewable? So bad reviews from 5 years ago or even 5 years of aggregated scores can be hard to overcome. Is it okay to limit them to the prior 12 months or 24 months? Maybe Lyle, that's for you.
Yeah, so I think it depends on what platform, right? We run into this all the time, that legacy stuff. Before, we always didn't have a priority to deal with the brand reputation the way we do now in place. So there's definitely things that are, 5, 6, 7 years ago that, pop up. Depending on the platform, it may even look, more recent, depending on the algorithm when they display it. So we try to respond to it. But at the same time, there's a lot of times when we can't have that control to limit it to what we're showing. Obviously, if it's on our website or something, yeah, we'd like to see more recent reviews. We've put out customized platforms where you could filter, and most of the time people want to see the recent stuff because what have you done for me lately type of mentality. But on other platforms, it's going to be tough because you don't often get to say if you can actually see those or not. So it's kind of how you deal with them, I guess.
So then another question is, what's the best way to build consumer trust of reviews? I think you talked about it a little bit earlier, Lyle. So there is the idea that having 100% of all positive doesn't really feel authentic. So how do you go about building just trust with your customers around reviews?
Sure, and I think that comes back to, the opportunity that you see in a negative review. Don't just scrape it off. Don't just get rid of it. Be open and honest. Admit to your mistakes. Like Molly said, if you really did make a mistake, be sincere and say sorry, apologize, but also explain how you're going to make it right. A lot of times customers or potential customers are going to understand that you're just a business. And when they see things like this, they're going to humanize your business. They make mistakes, you make mistakes. It's what you do to follow up. It's how you make it right. So I'd rather, someone would tell me, I'd rather use a business who, okay, they made a mistake, but they actually cared enough to make it right, instead of, okay, they made a mistake and then they tried to bury it.
Yeah. Well, on that, I'm gonna close our panel. I can't thank you both enough for the time and experience you've shared with us today. It has been invaluable. If anybody has any questions or follow-up, they can always send them over to the chamber, to me, and we'll make sure we connect you. If you have anything that you want Lyle and Molly to ask, I can try and make that connection. So thank you, Lyle. Thank you, Molly. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Again, our password is feedback if you're playing the game. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Take care.